I'm chuckling because I can tell you this story. I had this question a couple years ago, and somebody at DOD was telling me about a test DOD did where they got 50 vehicles and they cooked them. They put them into different environments. And they kept jacking up the laydown voltage level higher and higher until one of them started going blinking. And then they stopped the test. Because they rented these cars from Hertz and they wanted to take them back. Did anybody think how many vehicles the government retires every year? That they could have just taken, hey, send us over 1,000 cars that, you know, from the Department of Education. And, with the administrators still inside? No, I didn't say that. And let's really cook them and see what happens? No. I'm serious. And everybody was laughing as they were talking about this. We're not sure. We're not sure about line of sight, what happens if you're down in the garage. What I have been told is anything after about 1990, you're getting pretty iffy. Go to YouTube, look up Ford Taurus EMP. How many of you have seen that? There's a video of a Taurus being cooked off, which is not surprising. But as one person, actually one of the people at NASA commented, and it was like, Bill, even if it's only 5 or 10%, have you ever been stuck on the Beltway when only one car breaks down? You lose 10% during rush hour. So what if your car works? You ain't gonna get off the highway. I'm a military historian. What I drew upon for examples and such is, well, a number of different things. After the collapse of the Soviet Union, what really happened in Leningrad was finally opened up, some of the archives were opened up that had been kept suppressed. Now the Soviets had admitted that there was some societal breakdown in Leningrad during the siege, that there was some cases of cannibalism and such. The declassified stuff coming out of Leningrad reads like, it is beyond a nightmare of the savagery. There's a scene I put into the book where at my father's pizza, they didn't like me for this, where that's where the town's food supply is being produced and they're putting sawdust into the food and they've triaged the level of how they're going to feed people. Those who, they're basically saying you're going to die, those who can still do some kind of labor, those few who can actually help defend the place get the rations. I took that straight out of Leningrad, where 2 slices of bread, of which 30 to 40% of it was wood pulp, to make people think that their stomachs were full even as they died. The worst of human behavior there, at other places such as Stalingrad, what happened in Shanghai, and why did you do that? Watch me just sag. You know how crazy Russians are? I was dancing with a Russian once on a cruise boat, and I picked her up to twirl her around, and I dislocated my knee, and it popped. There was actually an audible pop, and I went, and I fell. Now, my students thought I'd had a heart attack, but she heard the pop, and she thought I'd been shot. And she's like, we as Americans have not seen true suffering within our nation since the American Civil War. And that was a war that was fought, relatively speaking, as wars go, with a very high degree of civility and societal control. When you look at what happened in Russia, China, and most places of the world, or in the ancient world, that sank into absolute anarchy and barbarity within a matter of days, that's what I drew on. Another thing that sociologically, which I find interesting, is at what point does a group fragment? How many people can you get together into a working unit where there's an identity to the unit? At what point does that fragment? Suddenly it's like, well, we're going to keep some things off on the side here and the hell with the rest of them. It is not all that big, and that requires a type of leadership Now, here's one other thing. I don't want to belabor this too much because I know our time's limited. On December 8th, 1941, a very shaken nation, at noon of that day, Eastern Time, everybody was gathered around radios, and they heard a voice of reassurance that said, yesterday, December 7th, and then remember, and we shall win through to inevitable victory, so help us God. And a whole nation felt as one. We had a leader who told us, look at what Winston Churchill did to England, one right after Dunkirk. He gets on and he says, yeah, we lost the battle, but we're going to win, and we will fight them on the beaches, we will fight them in the hills, we will never surrender. Suppose he said, gee, we've been screwed, let's have a commission study this. So, but, no, the bottom line is, we are not used to silence. That's going to be, I think sociologically, that's going to be the most frightening thing of all, in a way, is the total silence. There's no longer a voice of anybody we trust, respect, or even if we dislike. It's just total silence. Any parent, how frightened will we be that we can no longer reach our kid, who we check on every 3 hours when she's out on a date? It's the silence that's going to get us. Within the novel, the character John makes a decision, and people have their own supplies. As long as you're not drawing on the public supply, they're fine, just let them be. Whereas, what's the reality of attempted government takeover? I gotta be careful how I say this. I think in a post-environment, some authority figures decided they were gonna take over from all those who were getting ready beforehand. It's gonna be a hell of a fight. And I hope they realize that people who are prepared are actually a resource. But don't mess with us because we took the time beforehand to think about this issue.
And I thought you did an excellent job focused on that in the book, and it was very rational, and that's one of the reasons that John was such a wonderful, admired character throughout the book. So thank you.
Thank you, ma'am. And let me add one thing about the character John. Folks who live in Nashville, do any of you remember a wonderful gentleman by the name of General Donald Bennett? Omaha Beach veteran, 4-star general. That's John Matheson. The fact that he was a college professor, had a daughter, yeah, okay, that's coincidental to me. I base the character of John very much on a very, very dear friend who gave 40 years of service, actually was up for the Medal of Honor for securing the left flank on Omaha Beach. And when I was writing John Matheson, I was thinking my friend, General Donald Bennett. And if I talk any more about him, I'll choke up, because I still miss him.